So, according to the Oxford Dictionary, Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. So this means that the Egyptians are a dark race. So today on the final battle, we're going to be looking through the evidence that was out there before this big debate and before all of the, the whole Egypt as a nation is behind this forgery campaign. So let's see what the experts said.
The true face of Pharaoh Amenhotep III. If I say Pharaoh, the first name that comes to your mind is probably Ramses II. That's the most popular name associated to that word. But what if I tell you that he wasn't the most important ruler of Kemet? There were more powerful rulers, whose names and faces remain unknown to the public. And that's not a coincidence. You'll understand why at the end of this video. And Amenhotep III is one of them. He was known as the King of Kings. He ruled Kemet during what is probably its greatest golden age. A period of abundance in which Kemet became an empire, controlling foreign nations. You may not know him, but you know his relatives. He was the husband of Queen Tia, father of Akhenaten, and grandfather of Tutankhamun. So, why do we know so little about him? Well, there may be other reasons, but one of them may be because he looked like this. And as you can see, he clearly had thick lips, a short nose, a dark skin, and probably afro hair. Typical tropical features. Based on that data, I decided to recreate his face, and here is the result. What do you think about it? Is it accurate?
Finally, Greenhalgh thinks he knows why the forger picked Nefertiti and the Amarna period.
If you're going to pick a period of Egyptian art to fake, the Amarna period is really the best because the sculpture wasn't any more difficult than any other period, but it is the most valuable today to collectors and the rarest because it lasted such a short period of time. The damage on it is the major point of it being a later copy. It's something I've done myself, something I've seen on other fakes. It's quite obvious if you look at where it's damaged. The ears are damaged, so obviously it's been dropped left and right sides. The back of the head has been damaged, and most telling, the cobra on the conical cap is almost obliterated. To remove it, it would have taken off the nose, the brow ridges, and the chin. There's absolutely no damage to the face. The damage is selective, and that's a dead ringer for a fake.
Some serious hair, huh? Looks just like the hair on our heads today. So if anybody tries to tell you that Egypt is a white civilization, you can point out this hair. So those of you who have your cameras, you want to make sure you take a good picture of it. But this is what Gaston Pharaoh, an Egyptologist, said about the hair in the Nile in Egypt. He says the hair was inclined to be wavy and even to curl into little ringlets, but without ever turning into the wool of the Negro. But take a look at that hair. It looks like wool, doesn't it? This is a picture of the hair that's on a figure that was found. So you can see what the person looks like and what the hair looks like.
Mummy comes from an ancient word for resin, mum, and resin's embalming effects are often quite remarkable.
If you look at his hair,
Yes.
it's blondish. And so people have said, oh my God, was he a redhead? Was he a blonde person? But in actual fact, it's natron, which is the thing that was used to mummify him, which is a mixture of baking powder and salt, which is natural desiccant. But it colors the hair, and so that has reached the color of his hair, plus he was already going white.
Yeah. But he's still, even if he wasn't a natural blonde, he's probably 90. He's got a pretty good head of hair left, bald at the top, but that's quite a lot, isn't it?
How I finally created an accurate reconstruction of Tutankhamun that actually looks like his portraits. Modern reconstructions are not built to be accurate. They don't even fit over his skull without massive prosthetic distortion. In an effort to hide the clear prognathism that is typical of Africans from the region, they tilt his skull and elongate his nose. You will notice, when overlaid with his mummy, they have completed repositioned his eyes and the length of his nose. Not to mention it looks nothing like his portraits. This would not have been necessary had they just used his actual portraits. All of the 400 busts of Tutankhamun are able to perfectly fit his mummy without any change or distortion to his features required. It leaves you to wonder what the motive could have been in creating this unrealistic deformity and claiming it was a reconstruction. When I created this reconstruction based purely on one of the hundreds of available busts, matching the features and skin tone, not only did it perfectly overlay with his portraits, but it also perfectly matched his skull and mummy without any distortion. Who would have thought you could get a consistent and accurate reconstruction by simply honoring his likeness?
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro: Shammai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shammai had Nubian features, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elite were Mediterranean type, and in this sense, Shammai is representing the society of the frontier, in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shammai was Egyptian.
If I wanted to study ancient Egypt, or if I wanted to perpetuate the culture of ancient Egypt, I should not be looking further beyond my own culture.
Yes.
As an African Bantu.
Yes. Most of the Bantu groups that we have, and even the Nilots, like the Maasai. The Maasai, they tell you that they come from Kaila. Kaila is the original version of the corruption of Kaila is Cairo, which is the city in Egypt. The Bafokeng, the Barolo, they point you to ancient Kemet that were pointing to the north. But also some of the cultures of Egypt that are still left documented, you see that the hieroglyphics, you don't find any difference from the hieroglyphics to the ancient Bantu script. Some of those, you will get them even in the writings of Umkhulu Credo Mochwa here, when you talk about the Bantu alphabets. So you see that these Bantu alphabets are literally one and the same with the hieroglyphics, which is Greek for, you see, these are the same, which is what is referred to, this is the drum scripts. And then you had the hieroglyphics, which is picture writing, demotic, hieratic, the Meru script, which is basically the only script that up to so far the Europeans have not managed yet to decipher that particular script. So all of these things come from ancient Kemet. It had different institutions of preservation of knowledge, whether it's Karnak, is Thebes, is Heliopolis, or On, or the city of the sun.
About 100 years ago, American archaeologist George Reisner excavated many Kush monuments and discovered the tombs of its most important kings.
George Reisner was an amazing pioneer of archaeology in Kush. He started in 1908, he worked into the 1930s, very difficult conditions, and yet he managed to establish a basic chronology, not only of the broad archaeological periods, but of all the kings of Kush. He put them all into order, and it's an order that we still basically use today.
At El Kuru, Reisner got to the bottom of every pyramid, even as he was awed by the pyramids he excavated. He refused to believe they could have been built by the ancestors of the black Africans he saw all around him. His prejudices even seem to have clouded his eyesight. In 1916, when he discovered beautiful black granite statues of the great Kushite kings, he argued they were not real likenesses. Instead, he proposed that the kings and the builders of all the Kushite monuments had actually been light-skinned foreigners.
I think it just challenges so fundamentally some of his personal views about what people in the Sudan were capable of, that he finds it really difficult to suddenly read the evidence. Such a huge challenge that he can't get over it.
Reisner's writings about the Kushites are a window into his warped racial beliefs.
Its very race appears to be a product of its poverty and its isolation. A Negroid Egyptian mixture fused together on a desert riverbank, too far away and too poor to attract a stronger and better race.
Reisner wasn't the last, or the first, to disparage the Kushites.
Giant who became pharaoh. In the early 1900s, John Garstang, a British archaeologist, made a groundbreaking discovery near Gurja, in Upper Egypt. A large mastaba belonging to someone important. Among the finds were relief fragments bearing the name of an unknown pharaoh, Sanuk, the first king of the 3rd dynasty and predecessor of Djoser. Inside the tomb, archaeologists found the remains of a man, but something was unusual about them. Upon closer examination, they found that the bones were excessively large. He was 198 centimeters tall, making him 20 centimeters taller than his contemporaries. Even taller than Ramses II, who was only 175 centimeters. Some researchers initially suggested that his impressive size was due to gigantism. However, a new analysis found that he was not suffering from the condition. He was simply a remarkably tall man. In his book, The Making of Egypt, Flinders Petrie noted that Sanuk gave a fresh impetus to Kemet and that he was of Sudanese type. South Sudanese people are known to be the tallest men on earth, offering a possible explanation for Sanuk's height.